So the total fuel here, you see is 40, but that represents everybody,
Okay.
right? Well, last year, the 3,000 was only for the general administration car.
Okay,
That's why you see a difference here.
all right.
So how is it harder, putting lumping everybody in versus if you have each individual department, it's
Okay.
it'd be easier to tell?
What was happening is when you allocate it between departments, then you're not looking at the total fuel bill. Now I can look at the total fuel bill and I can do an analysis of how we're using it. Because the total number is gonna be apparent to me as opposed to being allocated. Now what we do is that in place of the same thing with telephone and what have you, I allocated that in the past. But making an analysis, in this particular budget, I'm just making an accounting change. And that's by recording those type of costs all in a general administration. And then what we do is, we will allocate a small portion, and I'll show you where that is in Public Works once we get to it. If you look at, Public Works is the only other department that's not in general administration, and I'll just show it to you now. If you go to page, on the Public Works, go to page 16. And you'll see a line item called administration costs. And that administration cost, that $36,000 there, is all of the allocated costs that comprise of fuel, copy machines, postage, and telephone that we used to allocate. And you saw it by departments. I'm gonna capture all that cost under general administration and then do what we call the Public Works and administration cost allocation to cover it all. But this way, I can better analyze those cost factors being fuel, electricity, and telephone, because I have the total bill in one category under general administration. And that's normally the way, that gives you a better means of doing an analysis of the costs you are incurring.
All right, thank you, Jay. Just for clarification purposes, the insurance employee health is going up because due to us being fully staffed?
Right.
Okay.
And then traditionally, each year, the cost of health insurance goes up.
All right, cool.
Mhm.
On page 3, workman compensation, last year was budgeted $0 in general administration.
Okay, right.
We wanted to spend it 15.
I separated it out.
Okay.
It was last year, it was under employee insurance. But this year, I'm adding a new line item to better identify, because when we get a bill for insurance, it does give us a separate cost for workman compensation.
Okay.
And so I'm adding a new line item this year as opposed to last year. I'm splitting it out
Okay.
to better identify costs.
All right, now, well, did you just budget 15,500 into election fees when
No, election fees, we looked at the costs that we've incurred in the past and made a determination going forward based on the historical costs.
All right. The postage as well?
Same thing.
All right.
You do an analysis of your current costs, and then as far as your current expenditures, and then you project that going forward as far as the new year. You have to also look at changes in operations,
Okay.
additional changes in operations, increased need, and potential cost increases.
All right, and then, when we go down the line, city park expense, I see $2,000 there allocated. I'm assuming, Mr. Mayor, will get a plan going as to what?
Yeah, primarily that is, we got the waterworks there at the city park,
Yeah.
and you've heard people say that it's not working. And that right there is the city's intention to get all that working, and then in the summer have someone on a part-time basis see to it that it works and what have
All right.
Now, is
Thank you.
the 2,000 for the payroll for the part-time person? 'Cause
you. No,
it's
the
not like-
part-time would be contract, that's total cost involved in that operations. It would fall under parks.
Okay, and that would be the part-time payroll,
It'll be in there.
and it's in $2,000?
Right now, again, given the limited scope, that's what we forecast. That, it might be that's what it's gonna take just to get it in operation, but again, it's to get
That's the
that,
line, just to.
yeah, right, for that
Well,
part.
actually, me and Mr. Glover got that in operation about a year ago. In testing, I think, Ms. Herndon might even been there with us. I actually tested and went under the water in my clothes. I mean, so the water thing works, but the point was that it's often locked,
Mhm.
and maybe the part-time person to make sure the guys,
Right.
try to keep it cut, included in their,
Then
in
again,
their workforce, but,
that would fall under that line item.
okay. And you think 2,000 is enough?
I'll be willing to do this, if you could. So we
What's that?
said postage, we spent $4,900 and then now we got 76. But we got.
Well, okay, remember, postage is another line item that was allocated out to all the departments. And so I'm calculating postage into one line item this year. That's why you see a large amount there.
JJ,
Yes, sir.
but that doesn't help us, right? So.
What's that?
So.
What do you mean?
If you're saying postage, this 7,600 includes postage from every department, so every department's postage is reduced?
No. Hear what I'm saying. The 3,000 you see here for last year was only general administration.
Correct.
If you flip over to Public Works, look at last year's postage under the budget, you're gonna see zero this year.
Uh-huh.
Let's flip over to page 15. Last year's postage for Public Works was $6,600. This year you see zero. That 66 is in that total that you see currently now for general administration. Because I allocate this, remember, it's an accounting type procedure in that I'm not gonna allocate it separately in the coming year. I'm gonna capture the cost all in one line item under general administration.
JJ, the
Yes, sir.
accounting procedure shouldn't drive how we see this. And so I thought Public Works stands on its own.
It does. Remember, I said that we're gonna allocate costs to Public Works under one line item to cover that. And again, you go to Public Works and you're gonna see general administration costs. That's how you do it.
JJ, we have not
What's that?
allocated it that way.
I know, and I told you, it's a new way this year. Go ahead.
But you don't get to just say it's a new way this year. This is the problem.
No, he's not.
You don't get to just say, this is the new way. We're trying to follow you, Mr.
Okay.
Johnson. And based upon what we have in front of us, we're not following. And
Okay,
so
I'm
you
explaining
just
to you.
communicated, you're doing this for an accounting procedure. And we're trying to now gauge now how you're going to charge back to Public Works so we can follow the numbers, because right now, you're shifting the weight to general fund. And we continue to told that Public Works stand on its own.
It is.
And so clearly communicate to us,
Okay.
since this is different,
Okay.
so how we can follow that.
If you go back to page 16,
Yes, sir.
I mentioned to you, there's a line item called administrative cost.
Uh-huh.
That's how it's gonna get allocated over, under administrative cost. Administrative cost is gonna include, those costs that were being allocated under separate line items, meaning it's primarily fuel, lease costs, and, telephone. We will capture that cost all under one line item under general administration, and we can see the totals done. that way.
And let me help you
Go
with
ahead.
that. In going through, putting the budget together, one of the things that I shared with Mr. Johnson was that when you look at our postage machine, everybody uses it. So it was a nightmare really trying to separate it out on a monthly basis. So he felt that if we could put all the numbers together, then he could extrapolate, and really it's still aggregate approximations, because there's no way to tell, because we don't have people, I mean, when we gotta mail something, we're mailing. Each month, we mail all the water bills. Of course, that's Public Works, but Public Works sends other things out with notifications. Sometimes we send certified, Ms. Durham, things like that. And everybody else is using the same postage machine. So it was a waste of time with what we were trying to do. And this way, he's able to work backwards and keep it all together, because it all comes in as one bill.
Exactly.
Mr. Judge,
Go ahead.
with my trust in you,
Mhm.
I understand I'm in agreement, but it's kind of hard to measure who's
Exactly.
using more telephone calls, more postage, and what's the other category?
You got lease equipment, that's for your copy machines,
All right.
telephone and fuel. See, when we were allocating that, it was a guess. So we didn't have,
You couldn't keep up.
we didn't have those costs in one spot to be able to determine what is our total fuel, what is our total telephone, and total lease costs. Now we're having it in one spot, and we can better understand those costs.
All right, thank you. But that is the only category
Yes.
in the budget that you
Yeah,
have done.
but, yeah, and then to answer Brian's question to me was,
Councilman Rowland.
excuse me, Councilman Rowland, is now, how do we accomplish building public works? And the way we accomplish building public works is through that line item administrative costs. And that's how, and they're still getting billed the same way, but it'd be under that one line item, administrative costs. Plus, we'll still be able to now look at those individual costs and get a better understanding of what we're incurring.
Okay.
Next question.
All right, so with this the same with the telephone, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, telephone is one of those that I mentioned to you, right?
Office workshops, I just would like to, I guess, congratulate you guys on going up with that. So hopefully, a lot of office and the new direction in which we're going in, we'll get the adequate training and be able to go to the conferences that they need, in order to better serve our
Yeah,
citizens.
that's the intent, that's what the departments, they put that together.
Also, JJ, I see that we did talk about a building official last time, and I want to say that you added that and what we
Yeah.
have today. Is there a way that we could take, I know you took it out and you put building official, but could we also make that contingent based upon the mayor bringing us back the work order in which, the direction in which our building official is going to?
You got the line item, I have no control over that.
Yeah, and I think in the motion to have one.
Yeah, the mayor have to come back to y'all.
That it come back
Y'all said those
with that
three were those.
Yeah.
Also, I know that now that we, as general admin, is there a way that we, well, Mayor, this question will be towards you, is there a way that we do an evaluation form so we can see, because as you know, we're not full-time employees, so we don't know how well or how awesome some of our staff, we think all these guys are great, of course. But we don't receive an evaluation form to be able to say whether or not to give an increase, or that we should say that we should wait till the following year, once we receive the evaluation form, or even to just make sure that we're covering ourselves as a city by knowing the work and the progress in which our city staff and employees are making, so that way, if something does happen, what we say, God forbid, but if someone wasn't taking care of their day-to-day operations, well, we have an evaluation form that.
Yeah, we're actually in the middle of doing the evaluations now, and Counselor, quick question, there's no issue with city council being able to see employee evaluations, I don't believe?
And they can see them, but they can't then draw the conclusions based upon them. That's an administrative function. So they can see everything that's done via the mayor/department head to a designated responsibility, but the evaluation itself of the employees is not appropriate for city council.
So how do we make a decision based upon whether or not, I mean, since we do vote upon the budget, whether or not to give a raise?
Yes, city council should not be making the determination on merit-based increases. They should be making a budgetary decision based upon we get this much for merit increases generally, and then the mayor as the chief administrative officer, under your form of government, would make that determination.
Oh, so we don't, so really we could have a, I guess this is a great question for JJ, so the 5% at which we see, we could actually get a total amount as to what that would be and how that should be allocated upon the mayor's merit base? Did I hear you
So,
correctly?
yes, so you can do a cost of living increase across the board, but any merit sort of increase would be at the determination of the mayor, but you could set a lump sum total in your budget for that amount.
So JJ, would you have to know the 5% increase to how much that number would be as a total amount?
Well, it's already a 5% in there.
Oh, yes, what the total would be, is 5%.
Say what now?
Salaries, the total increase of the salaries at 5%.
What,
He wants to ask.
all the salaries have, currently right now, the salaries basically have a 5% increase.
Oh, so this change is basically showing us what that 5%
Yeah, right.
is.
But go ahead. So that's in there.
My teacher got on me.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm in the police department now. I see that, it's police grants, and we, only allocated $1,000 when, within the last, 9 months, we spent $3,000, and I asked why the decrease in that area,
The decrease in,
police grants.
okay, that's all the amount that, since we currently don't have a, say, a police chief,
Yes, sir.
that right there, under that grants, $1,000 you see for grants, that's normally what we basically can get, an educational grant that's available to you. And so, right now, we don't have,
We don't know the direction of.
right,
the department
exactly.
is.
So we've been, whenever you budget revenue, you take a conservative approach, because the worst things that can happen to you is if you try to be very, from a revenue standpoint, you get yourself in trouble when you overestimate your revenue.
We got-
You're right.
What about staying with the existing 9-month annualized actual 3,000?
Again, we don't have a police chief.
Well, no,
Right, no, no.
I'm dealing with that.
Yeah,
I'm
my
dealing with
point
the
is that-
number, the number.
In the past, that annualized is based on history. We're not actually gonna get that 3,000, that was a 9-month. But when I look at the actual now, we're somewhere close to about $1,500.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
How would we, or where do we show, for example, the storage units or the high water vehicle that we got granted in at no cost? How do we show that?
You don't show it as a cost, but since you got it at no value, you value it at $1.
Okay,
Because
but
you didn't have to
it's-
spend.
But it's an asset.
I understand that, you value that asset at $1, because
Okay.
you didn't pay anything for it.
Okay,
That's what cities do when you don't pay anything for it.
okay. All right. Just checking.
Mhm.
If it's okay with council, I mean, I feel like we've been going at it for about an hour and 45 minutes, so I like that. I move that we allocate the next 15 minutes to citizen comments regarding the budget.
Well, before you do that, can I address something new that you just got?
Yeah, let's just take a break. from it.
Okay, go
I see
ahead.
some citizens.
Right, yep, excuse me, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. Oh, can I, may I
Okay,
address?
hold on, we got a motion on the floor.
Oh,
It's been properly moved and seconded that the next 15 minutes be allocated to citizen comments. You've heard the motion, ready for questions? Okay, I've got it unready. Ms. Council,
Yes, sir?
is that something we can do? I just want to make sure what we're doing is legal, and otherwise I'm okay.
Yes, absolutely. It's at the discretion of the council, it's just not required when it's not the hearing. So
Okay.
absolutely, it's not.
Gotcha. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passed. Okay,
343.
okay. First citizen comments, Ms. Reed, you got your hand up? Ms.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
I apologize, but I
Still
do
makes
have to
sense.
leave because this is a Sunday and some of us have church anniversaries and other things to go to. But my question is, and you can address it to her, I wanna know, is it legal or possible for the taxpaying citizens to also have a copy of the budget you are reading? So when you say go to page 9 and I got a question about number 7, we can know what you're questioning and what you're talking about since it's our money that you all are talking about? Can you ask her that? Or I'm not supposed to?
It's online.
Yeah, council, there's no issue with us making copies of the budget as we go over it, is it?
No, it's online.
I know it's online.
Yes.
That's not
I'm
my
saying, can
question.
You mean making
Yeah.
hard copies to get up to the citizens, do you think?
Right,
There's not a problem with that.
okay, yeah, it's something to do.
So we
Next.
can have that. So when they're asking the questions of why you didn't do this or why you this gonna be that, then we can be able to look and see exactly what you're trying to change. Okay, because some of us here also work with budgets also. So we understand
Next
really well
question.
about budgets.
Yeah,
Thank
I know
you.
we're limited time, but yeah, we can do that.
Do you have a question?
Next question?
You know, I have a comment, and I'm a little hesitant about this comment,
Yeah, let's keep it down in the back, we got a question, go ahead.
an observation more, Mayor. My friend on the council, Councilman Brian Rowland, has said I give him a hard time, but that's not the intention. My intention as a citizen and taxpayer is for us to be progressive in these meetings. Now, Brian Rowland has made an observation that I did not agree. That's the reason I want to make this observation. And his contention is we want to work together, we want to be transparent. And since I've been attending council meetings, the mayor has come before the group with committees, and Councilman Rowland objected to that. That was the committee that was dealing with committee persons for buildings. And another thing, when the question was raised about police and salary for the police, you know, again, using his words, transparency and working together. And I've heard several times, police chief, police chief. We have had a police chief that they voted against. You can't work together, and that's what I told Councilman Brian Rowland when he made the observation that I'm giving him a hard time. I said, no, I like to see us as a group work together. United we stand, divided we fall. We cannot be subjected with so many I's and not we. If you're going to exercise transparency and working together, don't come before the group with a forked tongue. We just cannot, that's my observation. You know, on the down low, you're calling me dumb. And at 90 years of age, I refuse to be assessed as being dumb. I understand very well, and thank you for the break in citizen comment. I had to get that out.
And just one small correction, it was the interim chief position that was
Well,
voted down, not to the chief.
any kind of chief, interim,
Right.
standby chief, observation chief.
Yes, ma'am.
The key thing is transparency. Thank you for the correction, Mayor. The thing is transparency and working together.
Gotcha.
I see so much, I'm gonna run the show, then don't come before transparency and working together. That's all.
Point well taken. Ms. Brown?
2 points that I wanted to make. First of all, I think that it's important that citizens have input, especially when you're talking about the way the city's money is going to be spent. When you're making decisions about things like the police, most of us sitting here are very much in favor of more officers at whatever cost it is. But it's like you all are using your own personal opinions without getting input from us about what we would like or what we think the city needs, especially in terms of police. The safety is a big issue here in the city. You had an additional almost 1,000 new people, 870 people that come in here from last year and we need more security. We need to feel safe. At least I do, and I'm sure everybody sitting up here needs to feel safe. And number 2, if you were going to change the way that you handle citizens' comment, it would have been good to let us know ahead of time that you were gonna change that practice, because normally we look forward to giving our input on these different items. Thank you, Councilman Jones, for making that motion, because some of us came here with serious concerns about certain things on the budget. And if we're not going to be allowed to discuss those things, you all should have told us, and we could have gotten with Councilwoman Wendy or Jones or whoever to give them to them in writing to bring them up. So those two are my concerns, that if you get input, talk to the people, talk to us, like Ms. Reed said, we need a copy of the budget so we'll know what you all are talking about. And if you're going to make changes to the way that citizens give input, let us know ahead of time. And that's it.
Yes, ma'am.
Just to piggyback on what Ms. Brown said, I agree with everything that she said, as well as some clarification about what a workshop is as opposed to, like when we have regular city council meetings, which I'm assuming will be tomorrow?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so how much of what you have discussed in this meeting will also be rediscussed tomorrow's meeting? Will any of this be on that agenda or not? Because it's just
Well,
kind of,
there is, I believe, it's a public hearing
There's a
on
public,
the budget tomorrow, so yes, this is just not listed as a public hearing, and that's why. But also in reference to, as some of you have been to other meetings, okay, our meetings have gotten way out of control. And since it's my job, I simply sought legal counsel and found out why, what's different. Well, we weren't doing what everybody else was doing. You can't do it in other city councils, you can't do it in commissioner's court. So it's a meeting for up here, and all I'm trying to do is rein it in. Because that's my job, because when it gets that bad, they were arguing between councilman and audience, that's out.
okay, so on tomorrow's agenda, there will be public hearing. But generally, of course, citizens' comments are at the beginning of the meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
And then you go into the agenda, and if required, then you have those executive sessions or whatever. But at what point will you then decide on the budget, and then we will, as citizens, know what the budget is, you know, the final budget for the,
I believe the budget's being voted on tomorrow, am I right?
that's why it's pretty important for us to have this workshop today, so that way we won't be in the meeting till 11 o'clock tomorrow. So I think Ms. Williams and myself thought it was a great idea for us to try. We know that Sunday is hard, but it's also been like cognizant of you guys.
well, you know, we don't mind giving up our time, because she likes, we're the taxpayers, this is our money. I mean, we want to know what's happening and how our tax dollars are being used. So we don't mind, and that's why we were here on time, you know, for the meeting.
That's right. Appreciate that.
But if tomorrow you will finalize this budget, when we come, those of us who are able to come tomorrow, we're not gonna have to sit through all of this of what you're doing today.
It depends, just to be honest. If we ask for some certain things to receive tomorrow. So remember, the process is exactly as it is. We have a public meeting that's a required meeting tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Then we actually vote, and then we hear citizens' comments again. Then at 6 o'clock, we start our regular scheduled meeting. There's an agenda item where we will approve the budget. This is based upon suggestions that we've asked for, and we've been asking for, that we receive tomorrow of the changes that we've been talking about.
So those things that you've asked for, though, are from whom?
Mr. Johnson and from the mayor will get together between tonight and tomorrow and make the changes. Mr. Johnson has already identified that he's understood what we've asked for, and he will get the staff. So again, if that happens, then again, we will go through that process. But we shouldn't have to go through the whole entire thing. That's what tomorrow's meeting at 5 o'clock, where citizens can come back and have a conversation. And just like this 15 minutes, we have a meeting at 5 o'clock tomorrow where citizens will get to voice their opinion. At 6 o'clock, we start a regular meeting, and then the city council, everybody who is here or who is not here, has the opportunity to vote with the community constituents, ask them to vote. No
Okay, so
question?
tomorrow, the 5 o'clock meeting, you still have to have a quorum in order for it
Absolutely,
to
yes, ma'am.
take place. So
Yes, ma'am.
you've got to have the participation then of the city council members
Yes,
to
ma'am.
be here on time.
Is that a question?
That's a comment, thank you.
Okay, yes, ma'am, thank you. Yes, you got a question in the back, somebody? Yes,
I don't
ma'am.
have a question, I have a comment.
Okay.
I've been sitting here listening to this discussion about the police department. Why all of a sudden, all this interest in the police department? When I remember at one time, I was told by the council, when I was on that council, let the police department do their work. Let them handle everything. I'm hearing about salaries. I don't hear you sharing that same concern about citizen safety. We need police officers, even two, a shift is not sufficient. You need to be up there discussing, well, where can we get some more money to give to the police department to make sure we have a safe city? Just Saturday night, for instance, there was a big party across from me. We had to call the police. There were 2 cars. As soon as they got there, they had another call for Brookside, then another call for Pine Street. We need more than 2 police officers per shift. So I would like to hear this council up there discussing citizen safety, especially you citizens whose tax dollar is used to pay those salaries that you're so concerned about.
Yes, ma'am.
Speaking of, over budget, I wanted to ask a question. If there's so much, why is there so much concern about the police budget?
Right.
When from my understanding, you have people on city council who have gone over their budget, spent way over their budget. So why is, and I'm talking about the travel budget, and I thought it was supposed to be equally divided among council members, but from what I understand, and I'll get a public, request, information request, why it seems like one person, who is, Councilman Rowland, has spent way over his travel allowance. That should be something, and the reason it's important that citizens have comments is because we've only done police budget. And some of us citizens have concerns about other parts of the budget that you all haven't even brought up yet. So, I mean, the way that you structured the meeting, you all can go ahead, after this 15 minutes is over, you all can go ahead and talk about other things when our concerns, when you get to that budget item, won't even be heard, and then they'll vote to approve it tomorrow, whereas we're just like,
Well,
out of luck.
I did double check. Tomorrow is a public hearing. So those specifics throughout the hearing are everything on the budget.
Throughout,
that
but
you're
will it
able
be
to-
too late for us to give our input
No,
before?
no, it's at 5 o'clock. We don't vote and deal with them until after the 6 o'clock meeting, so it is before.
Because there's 3
Input.
other budget areas that I'm very concerned about that I'd like to discuss.
Yeah, and the public hearing will be perfect for that. Yes, ma'am.
But
Yes, ma'am.
the fact that you scheduled this public hearing at 5 o'clock and city council at 6, does that not limit the amount of citizen participation? Because you're telling